Hey rock stars, Ricky Rocks coming at you for Custom Corner. Another episode where I like to talk about some of my new custom action figures that I've been working on. I do this quite a bit in my limited free time, but I like to, take some old toys and break out the paint and spackle and just shine them up, make them new, and do some cool stuff. Some of them are more complex, some of them are more simple, and we talked about a couple of them. Today we're going to talk about one that was pretty simple. And before we do, we're going to talk a little bit about a personal anecdote from my own history. Now, recently we did a video where I talked about the Batman and Robin 2-pack, and obviously if you saw that video or you know anything about me at all, I'm a huge fan of the Robin character. I talked about why and how fundamentally important Robin is to the entire Batman mythos. If you don't agree, get smart. You're wrong, period, end of discussion. But so yeah, Robin is super important. Now for me, I always grew up with Robin in some form or fashion, so I have a lot of personal history with the character. And so today, we're going to talk about some of that. When I was a kid, apparently I was born with a hernia, right? And then they didn't catch it until I was about 6 years old or so. And so I had to go in for surgery. And the surgery was horrible. It was really horrible. It was kind of traumatic, actually. I woke up and I was in so much pain. I was in so much pain. I was so pumped full of drugs that I ended up, I threw up all the stuff they had me on. It was horrible. But I was just in so much pain. And it was horrible. And so nobody could do anything to make me feel better, but to try, my dad went downstairs to the gift shop and he got me this. And now this is my original copy, first edition of Batman, A Death in the Family. This is the story, the infamous story, where the fans voted to have Robin, Jason Todd, killed at the hands of the Joker. Very controversial then, still pretty controversial now, honestly. People still talk about it to this day, and they debate whether it was right or wrong. Obviously, this book has been through the ringer. It's been with me since I was 6 years old, and, this is my original copy, and I've obviously read this thing to death. It's one of the most important storylines in Batman history, as far as I'm concerned. And, yeah, I still remember sitting in that hospital bed, and for a couple of minutes, I could focus on something else, and I flipped through this book, and, some might argue that this is pretty heavy stuff for a 6-year-old, but not to me, because my dad was already reading me the Batman comic books by that point, and Batman was always pretty heavy stuff, thematically. Even if it was not always graphically violent, they always dealt with some pretty heavy themes in the 70s and early 80s, so I was pretty well primed for it. But yeah, this story of the second Robin, Jason Todd, tracking down his real mother in the Middle East, running into the Joker, getting caught in a warehouse explosion and killed, was a huge deal in 1988, and I remember it being all over the news. It was literally newsworthy because they talked about it in the news. Robin had been there since the beginning, since 1940, and even though it was no longer the Dick Grayson version of the character everybody knew from the TV show and the old comic books, this was Jason Todd. But still, the fact that Robin was dead, killed by the Joker, was a huge deal. And, for some reason or other, this book made me feel a little better for a couple of minutes while I was sitting in that hospital bed. In between screaming and throwing up. I don't know. There was something comforting about all of it, in spite of the violence and the carnage, and, it's pretty graphic stuff if you haven't read it. If you haven't read it, you should read it. It's a great book. Some don't like it because, they're huge fans of comic books being a little bit more safe and for kids and everything. But, yeah, I was a kid, and I loved this stuff. Again, I was 6 years old, and I would say it didn't warp me at all. God, $3.95. This book cost $4 back in 1988, if you can believe it. $4 for this. What a bargain. Today it would be like 15, 20 easily, but yeah. So, if you didn't know anything about the Jason Todd Robin, which I didn't really, I knew a very little bit. I had the comics where he re-debuted after Crisis in '86, so I had those issues where he stole the hubcaps off the tires off the Batmobile. I had those comics, and then I had this. That was pretty much all I knew of the Jason Todd Robin. And this book gives you a pretty good heads up on who he was and what he was all about, and what made him different from the first Robin, Dick Grayson. Jason was more impulsive, more nihilistic, angrier. He had it rougher. His dad was killed by Two-Face. His mom was a drug addict who passed away. And so Batman took him in to try to give him a new lease in life, like he did with Dick Grayson. Spoiler alert, did not end well. Jason, being his own guy, he just couldn't stop leaning towards that darker path in life, and his recklessness eventually got him killed when he ran into the Joker, and it's pretty infamous. Apparently he later got better. I don't read a lot of the newer comics. I remember him coming back around 2005 or so, and I didn't really like the stories where he came back, but I loved this story where they killed him. It made me care a lot about the character in 4 issues. I mean, the idea of him wanting to find his real mother was something that was really... You could relate to that. You could sympathize with that. Finding out the mom he thought he knew wasn't his real mother and wanting to find his real mother to have some kind of connection to his real family. That's powerful stuff. I was definitely in love with that. You know, it's a dark story for sure. It's a violent story for sure. You know, the splash page here is infamous. I still really get emotional every time I see it. I do. Because I still remember the first time I saw it. Heavy, heavy stuff then and now for sure. But yeah, so if you know, a lot of people don't like Jason, and I would definitely say he's my least favorite of the big 3 Robins for sure. But you know, this series really makes you care in a hurry about his character, so that when he dies, you definitely feel the impact of it. You definitely don't want to see it, even though you know it's inevitable. It's literally called the death in the family. So, yeah. So, obviously, from the state of it, you can tell I read this book to death as a kid. It's been with me everywhere I've ever gone in life. It's always been on my shelf, just not too far away, because it's a story I still love to go back and read. And, you know, there's a lot to be learned from it, you know. And a lot of it set up what would later come with Tim Drake and other Robins. You know, specifically with Tim, Bruce Wayne set out to avoid the mistakes he made with Jason. He rushed Jason into being Robin, partly out of spite for Dick Grayson going off on his own, becoming Nightwing. They were estranged at that point, so, you know, Bruce being a very flawed and often petty individual, he rushed Jason into being Robin for very selfish reasons. And part of it was to get back at his, foster son, who he was now estranged from. You know, a lot of the best Batman stories are really psychological. It's not just about the violence, folks. It gives reason and structure to the violence. That is what's important. That is what's important in Batman stories. I think that's what a lot of people miss. It's the psychology of it all, and the psychology of the characters. So yeah, you know, while you could argue that Jason was technically maybe the worst Robin, definitely a strong character on its own. And unfortunately, until he came back to life and became Red Hood, never represented in action figure form. See, I took the long way to get in there, but we're always here to talk about action figures, right? So, Jason Todd as Robin has never been depicted in action figure form, and that always bothered me. Now, if you really wanted to stretch it, the Toy Biz Robin that came out in 1989 wore the classic costume, and the more recent Robin to wear that suit was Jason at the time, even though he was dead by that point. But The haircut gives it away. Jason didn't have parted hair ever. He had the messy bangs. So, if you stretched it, you could say that was a Jason figure. But I'm pretty sure they said it was Dick Grayson on the package. So, that ruins that theory. Yeah, it always bothered me that, and not from DC Direct, not from Mattel, not from McFarlane, you have not had a figure of Jason Todd as Robin. So I wanted to correct that. And so, in a really simple basic custom, and I just took the single card Robin figure. It's just a Dick Grayson body, and I just swapped the head. I'll put the link in the description for where I bought the head from. But yeah, just a regular old Robin figure I found loose on eBay. So it is the standard Dick Grayson body. Just swap the head out. The head's a little bit larger than the standard Mattel head, but it kind of works, like, especially, if you figure he's maybe about like 14 or so. It pretty much works. And when you see it in scale with other figures, it still looks really good. I had to paint it myself. I don't know, you can argue about how good a job I did. I think I did okay. What I did was, just basic warm tan from testers for the skin tone. I think most figures are too pale, so I did that with the skin. I just like it better. Just standard matte black with blue highlights for the hair. Just to give it some texture. And the mask was like, some dry brushing of some black and metallic green, just to give it some texture. So yeah, you can argue about how good I did painting the head. I struggle with that sometimes, but it's still fun for me to do. This is one of the simplest customs I ever did because I didn't touch the body at all. The body was in great shape. There was nothing that needed to be retouched or redone or anything, so I really just swapped the heads on it, and voila, Now, again, this is pretty much the new Teen Titans Robin. So he would have been like about 18 years old. So he's a little bit bigger. As we pointed out last time, he's bigger than the Tim Drake Robin figure by quite a lot. But he still scales well with other DC Direct figures. I really like how it came out personally. He's got kind of the surly expression on his face. Which to me kind of sets it apart specifically as Jason. So does the kind of messy bang haircut. He's got the bangs going on. I think it looks really good. I think it's definitely distinguishable from the Dick Grayson Robin by quite a lot. The head and the face are totally different, even though it's the same body. Now, the body, it's in between the Tim Drake Robin and a regular full-size DC Universe Classics figure. It's kind of in the middle. Maybe you could argue it's a little tall to be Jason, because as we saw in the other video, this body is a lot bigger than the Tim Drake Robin. But you're kind of stuck with what Mattel gave you, right? This is the Robin body that Mattel put out. So if you're going to do a Jason Todd, you're going to have to use this body because this is the costume he wore back then. So it's really just a matter of swapping the head. There's not much else you can do, right? So I think it still works really well. The head, I just did the standard thing with the hot glue gun, and it still has all the articulation. It's a little loose, but it's looser than it would be for an actual figurehead, but, it's not going to come off. So I did a good job with that for a change. Yeah, I really love the standard figure, so I really like the way the head looks with it. To me, this definitely screams Jason Todd as Robin. So, as a huge fan of this story in particular, I think this is filling a big hole in my action figure collection, because Kenner didn't give it to us, Hasbro didn't give it to us, Mattel didn't technically give it to us. There's been some Red Hood versions of Jason, but no Robins. So to me, this was a custom I always wanted to do. And so when I found this guy on eBay, I'll link it in the description. I get a lot of heads from this dude, and I got the Fleischer Superman head from the same gentleman. And yeah, so I definitely recommend going to this guy for custom DC action figure heads. You do got to paint them, but as you can see, they look great, and they sit well on the standard body. So we're going to be back in just a second to show you exactly how good he looks with some of these other DC Mattel figures. So yeah, I think I did a pretty good job. What do you think? Tell me in the comments, because I noticed some of you guys, none of you guys, you don't like to talk much, and I love hearing what you got to say. So especially about my custom figures, tell me what you think of this. I think I did a really good job with what I did. As simple as it is, painting the head, swapping it with the standard one from the off-the-rack figure. I think I did a good job, though. But what do you think? Tell me about it. We're going to be back in just a second. How does he look with some other prominent Batman-related action figures? I guess we'll find out, right? That's what we're here to do. Stick around. Alright, so here we can see exactly how this custom Jason Todd Robin scales with both Batman and, perhaps more importantly, the Joker. So yeah, I just grabbed the closest Batman and Joker figures I had handy, that being the Golden Age Joker from Mattel's Batman Classics line, and got the Batman from the Arkham City action figure line with the Silver Age repaint costume. So yeah, as you can see, this custom Robin scales pretty well with both of these guys. He's shorter than both of them, as he should be. In the other video, we saw that he's pretty big compared to the Tim Drake Robin, but this Jason looks pretty good for my money on a display next to your average Batman or Joker figure. You know, although I do not recommend letting this Robin figure take on the Joker alone. I do not recommend that. I definitely think you should have Batman close by to mitigate the situation, because otherwise, you know what might happen, and you don't want that. So, yeah, I definitely like how this guy turned out. I like how he looks with some other prominent figures. He's definitely great to display, and if you want to make one of your own, I can definitely steer you in the right direction on where to get the head. I'll tell you where the seller is. I think I just searched for Jason Todd Robin, and that's the head that came up. One of the heads that came up. They've got a lot of different ones. They got Red Hood, they've got Hush, they got a lot of Jason Todd heads. So this guy's definitely helped me out a lot. I've gotten a lot of different heads, Superman and Batman and Robin, Nightwing. I've gotten a lot of good heads from this dude in the past. So even though, you know, it's a little bit bigger than the standard Mattel DC Universe Classics head, I think it works just fine for this figure. I like the expression on it. So all you really got to do is find a Robin figure, and that's going to definitely set you back no matter what you do. Sorry about that. But, you know, they're out there for sure. Just check the usual places. And you got this head off eBay. I'm going to link you in the description. You do got to do the work yourself as far as the paint goes. I think I did alright. It wasn't too hard. Didn't take me too long. Yeah, I think it looks pretty good. So here we have a nice little example of what you can do with this guy once all's said and done. And like I said, definitely do not recommend letting him take on the Joker alone. So get your nearest Batman action figure and put him in between them, because otherwise it could be tragic consequences. So we'll be back in just a second to wrap it up. But yeah, I just wanted to give you a look at what is possible when you go ahead and do this kind of thing like I did. Alright, so yeah, I am really thrilled with how this custom action figure came out, even though it was pretty easy to do. Like I said, just get the head off eBay, paint it up yourself, pop Dick Grayson's head off the figure, put this one on, the little hot glue gun, you know, look it up online if you don't know how to do it. It's easy, takes 5 seconds to do, and then you got a cool figure like this one. As you can see, scales really well with your average Batman action figure. This is the closest one I could grab. that looked appropriate with the blue and gray outfit. So yeah, definitely really happy with how this guy came out. If you want to do one, which you should, I'll point you in the right direction in the description. But yeah, it always bothered me that Mattel or anybody, they never did a Jason Todd Robin. Again, they've done Red Hood, I understand that, but they've never done Jason as Robin, and I think that's a huge disservice, especially given that I'm a huge fan of Death in the Family. Not because I hate the character of Robin, because I love the character of Robin. And, it's a great story. At the heart of it, illustrates that actions have consequences, even for superheroes. So even though Jason was Robin for only a few years, debuted in 1983, and he died in 1988. So he was only around for about 5 years, but he definitely left a mark on the Batman mythos. His Robin was around for a sizable period, brief but impactful. He left a huge mark on the Batman mythology that's still felt to this day, let's be honest, because, apparently he got better from being killed, and he's back and he's doing stuff. I don't read a lot of the new stuff. But Jason Todd as Robin definitely left a huge mark on me as a kid, and as such, I always wished that I had an action figure representing his brief time in the role of Robin, and we never got that. So I had to do the work myself, but I'm really glad I did. I think it came out really great. Let me know what you think in the comments. Like, share, subscribe. All you got to do if you want to make your own, get the standard Mattel Dick Grayson Robin action figure off of eBay. Get the custom head, I'll link you, and paint it up, swap it on there, you're good to go. Couldn't be simpler. I think anybody could do it if you just take your time with the paint. Go slow, use a small brush, and you're good. So yeah, definitely fills a huge gap in my action figure collection, because I have the Tim Drake Robin, I have the Dick Grayson Robin, now I have Jason Todd, the one who doesn't get enough love in my opinion, even though he was controversial then, controversial now. The story in which he met his end, still very controversial, but he lives forever in our hearts and our minds, and now in action figure form. I went ahead and did the work myself, since Mattel couldn't be bothered. But that's what's fun about action figures, right? You get to do customs. I love doing customs, and we're going to talk about a lot more of them. We will. We've already done a few. This one, super easy. Love how it turned out. We're going to talk about, next time we do Custom Corner, we're going to talk about something that was a little more involved. And, you'll see what that is when we get there. But yeah, so happy with how this turned out. Let me know what you think. We'll see you next time on the Custom Corner. Ricky Rocks taking another trip to the Batcave. Dynamic duo of the 80s reunited. Couldn't be happier. Hopefully you like it too. And like I said, if you don't like Robin, suck a butt. God of Thunder!